Hey guys, so straight up friend, I just want to say that I had a root canal yesterday and it went wrong. Um, so yeah, in case you didn't know that can happen, it can. So I feel a little bit out of it, a little bit in pain, but I could not, and I seriously mean could not, get away without reviewing this arc for you guys that I have today because I just have so many feelings, okay? This book was too real. I read my romances for the light and the fluffy and the fun, and then this book was like, hey, what if I came for real feelings? And I was like, yo, that's a lot when you're also taking pain medication for a tooth that needed a root canal, and it's a whole thing. Anyways, thank you to Edelweiss and the publisher for a arc of this book, which is called Do I Know You? It is a co-authored book by Emily Wibberley and Austin Siegmund Broca, I believe is how you pronounce that. They are a husband and wife writing team. They've written a number of books together, but this is only their second romance novel. I have not read their first one. I have no thoughts about it. This is my first book ever that they've written. So Do I Know You is the story of Eliza and Graham, and unlike many other romance novels where it is two people meeting for the first time, this is the story of Eliza and Graham taking place around the time of their 5-year wedding anniversary. Eliza and Graham got married quite young, around 23, 24, and they've now been married 5 years, which puts them in their almost 30s-ish for an age range, and their marriage is on the rocks. And they are just not talking, they're not communicating, they've really just hit a rut. Neither of them is happy, and there are some outside things going on in their lives as well. And kind of sensing this, Grant's parents have given them a week-long vacation at this like very romantic resort in Northern California and said, hey, basically go out, take the honeymoon suite and like reconnect and fix your marriage and whatever, because meddling mother-in-law. So what you get from the dual POV and even the opening scene, which takes place during the 7-hour drive to this resort, is that both Eliza and Graham really want to make their marriage work. However, they are just really confused on how to do so. And both of them are really struggling to speak the other's love language and just really to have conversation at all. And you kind of get the sense that they're both like lost, but also just confused really as to why this is happening. So when they get to the resort, they find out that they accidentally have 2 rooms booked, this regular room in the hotel and this honeymoon suite. And when the person at the front desk goes to fix that, Eliza says, no, we'll keep the separate rooms, because the ride up has been so awkward that she's just like, listen, maybe it's just good if we have 2 rooms, we'll have some extra space. And of course, her husband takes offense at this. He doesn't understand what she's trying to do, make it a good thing. He thinks it's a bad thing. The lady at the front desk is very confused, but they get the 2 separate rooms. So what this leads to is that when they go to meet up for dinner, they're coming from different places. And Graham gets to the bar/dining room first, and he meets up with this guy named Dave. And Dave is part of a group of people currently at this resort for a week-long dating workshop that is going on. So not, people who've come as couples, but people who are just looking to understand maybe online dating or how to make a good impression or that kind of stuff you go to a week-long dating retreat for, I guess. And that's why Dave is there. Now, Graham kind of intimates to Dave that he has had a wife, but he is not currently there with his wife. And what Dave kind of takes away from that conversation is that Graham's wife is dead. And so they're talking at the bar, and then Eliza shows up. And Dave thinks that Eliza and Graham don't know each other. It's kind of awkward at first, and then all of a sudden Eliza just goes with it. And she absolutely pretends that Graham is a stranger. This is the first time they're meeting. They're both single and ready to mingle. And even Dave, from that first moment at the bar, realizes that there are some sparks, even if he doesn't really understand the whole story. And even though they're both kind of confused and they didn't plan this turn of events, they basically decide to, for the entire week, pretend that they are brand new people. They make up brand new personas, and they essentially agree to meet and date again for the first time, trying to bring the spark back into their marriage. There are two major themes going throughout this story, I think, and one is the basic one of communication, where Eliza and Graham, they just aren't communicating, and they aren't really being honest with each other about what they want. But what I liked about this story is that it added an extra level, which is that when you have a partner, in particular a long-term partner, you can get really comfortable and maybe you don't communicate as much. Some things you feel like don't need to be said, or you think they should know something. But also, we as individual people, we each have our own preferred way of being communicated with. And what has happened is that not only are Eliza and Graham not communicating, the ways that they are communicating are the exact opposite of what the other person needs to feel comfortable and supported in the relationship. And that was a really excellent extra layer that I don't think I had always thought about. I complain a lot about romance novels and just like, oh, if they had just talked to each other, the situation wouldn't have happened. But in this one, it makes it a little bit more complicated, right? Like, just because Eliza and Graham start fake dating and they're talking and they're finding out, like, there is still this, like, spark and sass to their relationship, that just revving the engine like that is not going to fix their marriage. And it could have been that simplistic, and it wasn't, and I really appreciated that. There are also elements of, while they're not happy in their marriage, they're both not necessarily happy with themselves. Eliza narrates audiobooks and video games, and she loves her job, but she has recently had a falling out with her only sister, her younger sister, who is getting married. She was supposed to be the maid of honor, but now she's not even invited to the wedding, and she's having a really, really hard time letting Graham into that situation or really dealing with it at all. And it's kind of like a metaphor for how Eliza just really struggles to deal with confrontation, like, at all. And meanwhile, Graham, who is a lawyer, he loves his job as well, but he's starting to worry that maybe his job is making him a little bit too monotonous. He's not very fun. He just, wake up, go to work, hard work, come home. And he feels like Eliza is pulling away from him, and he's blaming himself and saying, well, is it because I'm boring? Is it because, I'm not good enough for her and she's so lively and vivacious? And really, Eliza just, like, is not only dealing with her own problems, but Graham is interpreting it as his fault. And again, this is an excellent extra layer of, they each have to be able to deal with their own insecurities and their own problems. The other person is not going to fix it for them. And you know how I love that in a romance novel. It's so good. There are some parts of this that I wasn't as big of a fan of. So it is a dual POV, which normally I'm really, really happy about. But in this book, it repeats a lot of scenes. So a scene happens from Graham's point of view, and then it goes back to Eliza, but rather than the story picking up from there, you kind of get overlap sometimes with the scene that just happened. And in some cases I'm like, okay, I see why, but in other cases I'm like, I can mostly intuit what she was thinking or her internal dialogue or whatever during this moment. So could we just move it along? And I think that was a problem with the middle / ending of the book. I felt like, and of course no spoilers, but I felt like it just dragged on in the pretend phase for a while, and they kind of kept repeating some of the same problems, and it was like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But I really, really wanted to see more of this conversation where they actually have real conversations and work on stuff. It is done really well in the end, but I think there could have been more of it, because at a certain point, even I feel like the characters are tired with this pretend thing and it's not working for them. And it still just kind of goes on for a little bit more before they kind of like deal with it. I think kind of to make it a bigger moment, but I just kind of wish that it had been more of like a, okay, this is working, but other stuff isn't working, and maybe we should work on that. I really enjoyed this book, but it was also really tough to read. And I say that just because I have not been married for 5 years, but I've been in the same relationship for 6 years. And I feel like there were a lot of conversations that Eliza and Graham had about like communicating or how to communicate best with your partner, or like when you feel like you're not being seen. And that just really resonated with me. And some of it was like really rough to like kind of sit there and think about, and like, oh my gosh, like 6 years in, am I doing some of this? So it was definitely a book for me that I really enjoyed. I enjoyed the realness of it in a way that's not very like frothy like a regular romance novel. But at the same time, it meant that I actually couldn't like, I normally read a romance novel in like 1 to 3 sittings, right? And this one I read it in sections and I took my time because I was like, wow, that's a little too real, guys. It's a little too real. So if you're looking for fun, flirty, frothy, like top level, just like easy read, fun, cutesy, that is, some of those elements are in this book. I'm not saying they're not, but I'm also saying that it is also a book that is tackling how hard love is sometimes, and just loving someone isn't always enough. You need to put in the work. And like I said, there's communication, and then there's communicating appropriately and in the right way with your partner, and taking the time to learn not just to communicate, but to communicate in the way that they need you to communicate with them. So it's definitely a turn from some of the other stuff that I've been reading lately, where I'm just like, oh, it's so cute, it's so fun. And this is, I mean, it is flirty. It is not clean, but also not like deeply explicit either. The sex scenes are not that long, so it's like a middle ground maybe for people who don't like long and extended sex scenes, but like sex in their romance novels. But like, yeah, it's not like very surface level, this book, in a good way, but still. I don't really see a lot of books like this, books that are tackling relationships that have been going on for a while. I love a good second chance because I love people who've been together and then they've changed and they get back together. But this kind of thing is a really, I don't see it a lot. I think the last time I read a book like this was either like the Bromance Book Club or one of the books in Tessa Bailey's Hot and Hammered. And so if you know more books that are like this, more like long-term relationships that be working on it, I don't know, I'm sure there's a trope for it, I don't know the word, but if you have any other recommendations that are books like that, please leave them down below. I would love to check them out because I don't think I could read a lot of these in a row, but when well done, like this book was to me, I think that they're just good. They're good for the heart and the soul, even if they're not like easy to read. Again, this is an ARC review, so if you are watching this review the day that it comes out, this book is not yet out, but you can pre-order it if you're interested. Sometimes libraries do a coming soon thing on their app, or if you put it on hold in your library system, if it's already there, go out and do that if this sounds like a good book, because again, even with the writing flaws and some of the pacing issues, I really had a hard time letting that distract me, because I was like, wow, oh, that was real, oh my. And again, I enjoyed that. And if that sounds like something you want to, highly recommend this book, and you should go out and get it, and then leave me a recommendation down in the comments below if you have one. So I made it to this review. My mouth is starting to hurt, so I'm gonna go not talk for a while, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.